Ever wondered what would happen if you ate like a lion? Just meat, meat, and more meat. No veggies, no carbs, just pure animal kingdom vibes. Sounds wild, right? Well, that's the carnivore diet in a nutshell. It's been blowing up in recent years and it just doesn't stop. Everyone talks about it like it's the holy grail of weight loss and health. But is it really this great diet or just another passing fad? Hello my dear and welcome. I'm Marina, a registered dietitian, here to help you navigate your weight loss journey without losing your mind.
I will always be your faithful leader in easy weight loss.
We're diving into the carnivore diet, why it might work, why it might not, and what you really need to consider before tossing your veggies like it's a last season fashion. At its core, the carnivore diet is exactly what it sounds. A diet that consists entirely of animal-based foods. That means meat, organ meats, fish, eggs, and depending on the version, small amounts of dairy like hard cheese, heavy cream, or butter. No fruits, no vegetables, no grains, legumes, nuts or seeds. If it grew in the ground, it's off the plate. The most hardcore version is basically cow. But in all versions, plant foods are completely excluded. Even coffee and tea, since yes, those come from plants too. The logic behind the diet rests on an evolutionary argument. The idea that early humans primarily ate animal foods and that modern diseases are the results of shifting away from this ancestral pattern. Unlike keto or paleo diet, which limits carbs but still includes some plant foods, the carnivore diet aims for zero.
Is butter a carb?
There's little guidance on calories, macros, or meal timing. The general rule is to eat when hungry and stop when full. Simplicity is part of the appeal, at least until you realize your fridge just became a very expensive meat locker. Supporters claim it's a cure-all. Weight loss, mental clarity, digestive relief, even reversal of chronic illness. Critics argue it's nutritionally incomplete, unsustainable, and potentially harmful in the long run. But let's be positive first and look at why it can actually work for weight loss. First off, it's super restrictive.
I don't eat carbs.
You're cutting out entire food groups, but more importantly, you're cutting out the one food group we all secretly love: junk food.
Secret junk food time.
No processed snacks, pastries, ice cream, or fast food. All the delicious, highly palatable stuff loaded with sugar, fat, and calories, gone. That alone slashes calorie intake by a lot. And here's the equation. When you dramatically cut calories, you lose weight. Simple as that. When you lose weight, your health markers usually improve. Not necessarily because of the carnivore diet itself, but because the problem was excess body fat in the first place. Obesity impacts blood sugar, cholesterol, inflammation, all of it. So losing weight, regardless of the method, usually leads to better health. You might even feel better. Many people report having more energy, clearer skin, and less bloating. Part of that is weight loss, but also cutting carbs nearly completely drops a lot of water weight too. Carbs bind to water in the body, so once they're gone, so can be the puffiness and bloat. The carnivore diet is basically high protein, moderate to high fat, and zero carbs diet. Think keto, just way more restrictive. Honestly, miserable might be closer to the truth, but let's stick with restrictive.
This is the worst.
Nevertheless, studies do show that high-protein, low-carb diets can absolutely work for weight loss if you work them. Have you ever tried a low-carb diet, or are you team carnivore furiously typing your "it saved my life" comment in all caps? Whichever camp you're in, there's something to learn from both sides.
I make learning fun. Incredibly fun.
Beyond weight loss, some health improvements might come from eliminating foods that trigger sensitivities. People with food intolerances, autoimmune issues, or gut dysfunction might react to fiber, plant compounds, or fermentable carbs common in vegetables, legumes, and grains. The carnivore diet acts as a very low residue elimination diet, removing these potential irritants. Early research even hints it could help manage bowel diseases like IBS and even Crohn's and ulcerative colitis in some people. But that's not why most people jump on carnivore. We'll come back to broader health effects later. Another reason why carnivore can work is satiety. It's super high in protein, which is the most filling macronutrient. If you weren't eating much protein before, this increase alone can reduce hunger and cravings. Again, cutting calories. And let's be real, eating steak or eggs 3 times a day isn't that exciting. When you limit food palatability and variety, it's harder to overeat. There's no flavor explosion, no dessert round. Stopping when feeling full becomes easier when food reward is low. No constant novelty pulling you back for more.
They pull me back in.
So yes, carnivore can work for weight loss. For some, it's the structure and simplicity they needed to get started. And when the weight drops, you usually feel better, move better, and look better. Does that mean it's the best diet for everyone long term? That's another conversation. But in terms of short-term weight loss, it's not magic. It's extreme calorie control through elimination diet with a side of simplicity. The real power of the carnivore diet isn't in the meat. It is in what it takes away, and believe me, in most cases, vegetables weren't the problem. But here's the most problematic thing. And I say this as a dietitian who works with people struggling with obesity, but also as someone who has personally battled it since childhood. Weight loss is not the hard part. Keeping it off is. Research shows about 50% of lost weight is regained within 2 years and over 80% by 5 years. This isn't opinion, it's data and some personal experience. So ask yourself this. Is this diet sustainable? Can you eat this way forever? What's your exit strategy? And if you have one, why not start there in the first place? Because if not, the weight usually comes back, sometimes even faster. Sustainability matters more than short-term results. A diet that doesn't teach balance, flexibility, or how to handle real-life food situation might help you lose weight, but then what? Drop a comment if you ever tried a restrictive diet like carnivore and let us know what it was like. The most hardcore one I tried in my teens was the cabbage soup diet. And let me tell you, there is such a thing as too much fiber. So let's flip the script for a second and talk about why the carnivore diet doesn't work for everyone when it comes to weight loss. Some people, usually men, let's be honest, will say it's simple. Just eat meat, eggs, and maybe some butter, and that's it. Yes, simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. That simplicity comes from extreme restriction. It's basically, as we said, a classic elimination diet, just one that got a rebrand and went viral. Here's the thing. People who struggle with obesity have usually tried every kind of diet under the sun. But do you know which ones actually work in the long run? The ones you can stick to. The ones that fit your life. And for many, carnivore just isn't that. The restriction can cause frustration, boredom, and burnout. It's hard to follow in real-world situations. Restaurants, social events, family dinners. You are always explaining your food choices or making exceptions. That pressure can build, and diet fatigue is very real.
I've been on a diet since 1992.
Another issue, the all or nothing mindset. Carnivore encourages black and white thinking where some foods are good and others are permanently banned. Research shows this kind of rigid mentality is linked to poor long-term outcomes, and it often can trigger the classic binge-restrict cycle. You eat something off-plan, like a slice of cake at a wedding, and suddenly you feel like you failed. That guilt can spiral into overeating, and not just physically but emotionally, out of deprivation. And with every diet slip up, you are actually making it harder to succeed next time because your brain starts to believe you failed. And those negative thoughts can hold you back more than the extra calories ever will. And let's talk satiety, or a lack of it, in the long term. Sure, meat is filling at first, but carnivore removes a key weight loss strategy: volume eating. That's when you eat large portions of lower calorie, high fiber foods like fruits, veggies, legumes, and whole grains to feel full without overeating. On carnivore, you are eating portions of very calorie-dense foods. That may feel satisfying for a while, but when boredom, stress, or emotional eating kick in, the lack of volume can backfire hard. Now here's another thing people don't talk about enough: appetite dysregulation. If you spent years obese, ignoring your hunger and fullness cue, or if emotional eating has been part of your life, it's absolutely possible to overeat even on carnivore. Fatty cuts of meat, butter, eggs, they add up. And if you're not in a calorie deficit, the weight simply won't come off. There's nothing magical about meat that overrides energy balance. If anything, the high calorie density makes it easier to overshoot your needs, especially when portion sizes aren't intuitive. For example, a small, sedentary, middle-aged woman aiming for a calorie deficit might need to stick to around 1,400 calories a day. Just 1 tablespoon of butter clocks in at about 100 calories, and typical fatty steak can easily pack 600 to 800 calories per serving. The day's budget can be quickly blown without even realizing it. And then there's cost. High quality meat isn't cheap, especially if you're aiming for grass-fed beef, pasture-raised eggs, or organ meats. There's no room for budget-friendly staples like rice, beans, or lentils. That makes carnivore tough for families, students, or anyone trying to eat well on a budget. Well, everyone in this economy. Plus, if sustainability and ethics matter to you, eating animal products exclusively may raise some serious concerns. Here's another subtle issue. You don't really learn much. You're not learning balance, portion control, how to enjoy treats in moderation, or how to handle cravings without rules. You're just learning how to follow a strict list. So when the diet ends or life inevitably changes, you're left without the tools to manage normal eating. And finally, psychology. For some people, the diet becomes more than just a diet. It becomes their identity. They start preaching it like it's the secret to eternal life, and yes, sometimes they can get a little annoying about it. Imagine a carnivore and vegan sitting at the same table. It can get intense. That attachment makes it incredibly hard to stop, even if it's no longer working. Because letting go doesn't just feel like changing what you eat, it feels like changing who you are. And that's a tough spot to be in. If any of this hit home, made you think, or mildly entertained you, give this video a like and maybe hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Now the question: will the carnivore diet actually improve or harm your health? Short answer: yes, both. If you are obese and lost weight, your health markers will likely improve. That happens regardless of method and with any diet that puts you in a calorie deficit. But beyond just weight loss, some people swear it cured their autoimmune issues, fixed IBS, or helped with anxiety and depression. While there is strong evidence supporting carbohydrate reduction for improving metabolic health, claims about broader, all-over anti-inflammatory effects from eliminating all plant foods don't hold up in the current scientific literature. Still, it's not all fiction. Early case reports and small studies suggest carnivore-style eating may offer relief for conditions like inflammatory bowel disease. In this context, diet acts as a low-residue elimination diet, removing fiber, common allergens, and plant compounds that may trigger symptoms in sensitive individuals. For people with autoimmune conditions, gut dysfunctions, or multiple food intolerances, stripping things back to just a few well-tolerated foods can calm symptoms. But let's be clear, the benefit likely comes from what's removed, not the meat itself. The goal of an elimination diet is to remove, test, and reintroduce foods to find what works, so you can build a sustainable, long-term way of eating. Also, autoimmune diseases are complex, shaped by genetics, immune regulation, gut health, and environment. And weight loss alone can reduce systematic inflammation and ease symptoms regardless of how it's achieved. For many, it's the restriction and the weight loss doing the heavy lifting, not the elimination of plants. Some people also report better mood, clearer thinking, or fewer anxiety symptoms. Maybe it's more stable blood sugar. Maybe it's placebo. Maybe it's early signs of real effect.
And maybe it's Maybelline.
We just don't know yet, and there's not enough robust data to separate the hype from the science. Which brings us to one of the biggest red flags of the carnivore diet: the complete removal of dietary fiber. Now, I know you're not here for a talk about constipation, but fiber isn't just about keeping things moving. It plays several crucial roles in maintaining long-term health, and cutting it out entirely has consequences that go way beyond your toilet routine. So, are you a regular? Drop it in the comments. Fiber supports digestive health, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and helps keep bowel movements regular. It's also essential for slowing digestion, releasing glucose gradually into the bloodstream. Without fiber, you get faster blood sugar spikes and crashes, a problem if you are insulin resistant or have type 2 diabetes. In fact, many studies link high fiber diet, especially from whole grains, legumes, fruit and vegetables, to better insulin sensitivity and lower diabetes risk. Soluble fiber is also food for your gut microbiome.
Your microbiome is so healthy now.
Beyond blood sugar, fiber also supports heart health. It helps lower total and LDL cholesterol and has been linked to reductions in blood pressure, two key risk factors for heart disease. So, when you cut out fiber completely, you are not just impacting digestion, you are potentially missing out on major long-term health benefits too. Fiber is also a game changer when it comes to fullness, as it's adds bulk to meals without adding calories. That means you can eat more food, feel full, and still stay in a calorie deficit. Picture this: 300 calories of steak versus 300 calories of lentils and veggies. One is gone in a couple of bites, the other fills a whole bowl. Now imagine combining the two. You get flavor, fullness, and fiber. That's called volume eating, and it's a key tool for sustainable weight loss. Carnivore takes that away, leaving you to rely on fat and protein alone for satiety. Effective? Yes. Protein is the king of satiety, and fats also help, but not always satisfying, especially long-term, as fiber provides additional stomach-stretching fullness. And here's the real kicker. When it comes to long-term health and longevity, fiber is a star. A 2000 meta-analysis in The Lancet found that people with the highest fiber intake had 15 to 30% lower risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and certain cancers, including colorectal cancer. Another 2011 meta-analysis found that every additional 10 grams of fiber per day was linked to a 10% lower risk of the same cancer. Cut out all plant foods and you cut out those protective effects. That's a hard sell, no matter how trendy meat only gets. And honestly, do we really still need to convince people that fruits and vegetables are a good idea? Sure, short-term elimination might help some people feel better, especially if they have gut issue or food sensitivities. But removing all fiber long term, that's not something science is backing. Not now, not ever.
Just eat your fucking salad.
Another concern with the carnivore diet is its high saturated fat content. To be clear, saturated fat isn't the villain it was once made out to be. Your body can handle it, in moderation. The issue is not its presence, but the quantity that begins to dominate when a diet revolves around fatty cuts of meat, butter, and organ meats. On a carnivore diet, it's remarkably easy to exceed the recommended limit around 10% of your daily calorie intake without even trying. And that 10% isn't just a random number. It's based on decades of research linking consistently high saturated fat intake to elevated LDL cholesterol and in over time increased cardiovascular risk, especially when fiber intake is low and unsaturated fats aren't present. Yes, if you lose weight, your blood lipids, including cholesterol, often improve. But that's the weight loss talking, not the saturated fat. The benefits come from being in a calorie deficit, not from butter with every meal.
Calories, calories.
Calories, calories.
As for long-term outcomes, cardiovascular effects of the carnivore diet remain unclear, but early data and expert analysis suggest the risks may outweigh the benefits, particularly for certain individuals, as one important nuance is genetic variability. Some people are hyperresponders to saturated fat, experiencing significant spikes in plasma cholesterol when consuming large amounts. For them, even with weight loss, cardiovascular risk may increase substantially. Another key consideration is what the diet displaces. When animal fats dominate every meal, they crowd out the fats most consistently associated with heart health. Polyunsaturated fats from fish, nuts, and seeds, and monounsaturated fats from olive oil and avocados. Even replacing saturated fats with minimally processed carbohydrates, such as legumes or whole grains, has shown clear long-term benefits in large-scale studies. The issue isn't saturated fat alone, it's what you're not eating when it dominates your diet. And one more point before we move on. Doing carnivore badly makes everything worse.
Dad, this says I gained weight.
The base diet isn't ideal, but if you start leaning heavily on processed meats like bacon, sausages, and deli cuts, the health risks spike. Multiple meta-analyses have linked processed meat consumption to higher rates of heart disease and certain cancers. And we are not talking about massive amounts. Even moderate intakes show a risk increase. So if you are going to try carnivore, and I'm not saying you should, at least skip the heavily processed meats.
Sausage! Where's my sausage? There's no sausage!
Stick to whole, unprocessed meats to avoid stacking even more risk on an already extreme approach. And while we're here, let's talk about salt. Especially when one leans heavily on processed or cured meats, this can quietly push sodium intake way beyond recommended limits. High sodium is a well-known contributor to elevated blood pressure, which raises the risk of cardiovascular issues. In a more balanced diet, potassium from fruits, vegetables, and legumes help counteract sodium's effects and support healthy blood pressure. But on a carnivore diet, that natural buffer is gone. With potassium intake dropping and sodium intake climbing, the electrolyte balance gets skewed, potentially increasing the strain on your cardiovascular system. Now it's true, in some people, the weight loss on carnivore can lead to improvements in blood pressure, sometimes dramatic ones, but this isn't guaranteed. For others, high blood pressure persists even after shedding pounds, particularly when sodium remains elevated and potassium stays low. Now let's turn to another major concern with the carnivore diet: essential nutrient deficiencies. Since this diet includes all plant-based foods, no fruit, vegetables, grain, or legumes, you miss out on a wide range of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that are vital for long-term health. Take vitamin C, for example. It's critical for immune function, skin health, and wound healing, and is found almost exclusively in plants. Some carnivore advocates claim raw liver or meat provides enough vitamin C, but the amounts are usually insufficient over time. And realistically, who's regularly eating raw liver? Humans actually lost the ability to produce their own vitamin C millions of years ago due to a genetic mutation, a change that made sense when our primate ancestor ate plenty of fruit. If an all-meat diet were truly ideal, evolution wouldn't have let that ability disappear. And by the way, if we are going to advocate for eating like our ancestors, let's not be picky. That would mean skipping phones, cars, electricity, all the fun parts of modern life. Full tribal living. Important minerals like magnesium and potassium are also primarily found in plant-based foods. Think leafy greens, bananas, avocados, nuts and seeds, legumes. These nutrients play a critical role in muscle contraction, nerve signaling, and maintaining healthy blood pressure. When your diet falls short, imbalances can quietly develop, potentially straining your cardiovascular and nervous system. That's why some people turn to supplements to help fill the gaps. And it's not just about minerals. Plants also give us phytonutrients, natural compounds with antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects that help protect your cells, support immune function, and reduce the risk of chronic diseases. We're talking about foods like berries, colorful veggies, the real nutritional heavy hitters. When you cut out plants entirely, you are not just ditching fiber, you are walking away from a whole buffet of protective compounds. Some proponents argue that organ meats like liver cover most vitamin and mineral needs. While organ meats are nutrient dense, offering vitamin A, B, iron, they can't fully replace the diverse array of micronutrients found in balanced diet, including plants. Vitamin K2, important for bone and heart health, is present in some animal products, but generally in smaller amounts compared to the full spectrum available in leafy greens. Now, long-term studies on the carnivore diet are limited, but based on what we know about nutrition, cutting out all plant foods raises a serious question about nutrient deficiencies and their potential health consequences down the line. While short-term carnivore eating might not cause immediate issues, especially if you are supplementing or consuming a wide variety of animal products, the absence of plant-based nutrients is critical consideration before committing long-term. And when it comes to weight loss, long-term is the name of the game.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I'm sure you're aware of that, and also aware of the challenges it brings. So let's open and share our struggles in the comments. What's been your toughest hurdle on your weight loss journey so far? So, what's the bottom line on the carnivore diet? It can work for short-term weight loss by cutting out junk food and carbs, simplifying your choices, and naturally lowering calories. But it's not magic, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. The real challenge is sustainability. Can you maintain this extreme elimination diet through social events, family dinners, and everyday life? If not, the weight loss will be stalled, or if lost, the weight will likely come back, sometimes even faster. And without the fiber, vitamins, minerals, and nutrients from plants that protect your long-term health, you are playing a risky game. Also, let's be clear. People with kidney disease or any medical condition affected by high protein intake should absolutely avoid diets like this unless under strict medical supervision. This isn't just a lifestyle trend for everyone to casually jump into. In my professional opinion, there are better, more balanced options for most people trying to lose weight, especially those without gastrointestinal intolerances or medical conditions that might benefit from a strict elimination trial. Low-carb diets that include a variety of plant foods for fiber and essential nutrients can be effective and sustainable for weight loss and overall health. But they are not the only ones. Science supports several effective approaches to weight loss, and they are not all low carb. The Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, and even lower fat, calorie control plans have all shown solid long-term results. What they have in common is balance, flexibility, and nutritional variety, not extreme restriction. So, if you want to cut back on bread for a while, go ahead.
Well, I'm not eating bread now. I'm off bread.
A well-planned low-carb diet can absolutely work. Just know it's not the only path. The real key is choosing an approach that fits your life, not fights it. Because for those of us trying to lose weight and improve our health, there's no need to go black and white. Focus on whole foods, cut back on ultra-processed snacks, drink water, ditch the sodas, and avoid chasing trendy diets. Weight loss isn't a sprint fueled by fats. It's a marathon built on sustainable habits you can live with forever. As always, thank you for watching, my dear, and if this video resonated with you, hit like and subscribe for more weight loss and nutrition insights. Stay curious, stay kind to your body, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Now let's eat some steak. Mwah, mwah.